in Wisconsin Rapids, and I am here today with another Let's Make Lunch episode. In today's episode, we are going to be making spaghetti and meatballs. Yes, one of my very, very favorite things to eat. We're going to learn a little bit about where spaghetti and meatballs came from. We are going to make our own homemade meatballs and bake them. We're going to make our own homemade sauce. And we are going to cook up some spaghetti noodles to put it all together with. So before we get started on the cooking portion, we're going to learn a little bit about the history of spaghetti and meatballs. So when you think of spaghetti and meatballs, you think of Italy, right? But if you went to Italy, you probably wouldn't find them on a menu. They aren't actually Italian. So what happened was, Italian immigrants from Italy moved to the United States in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and when they came to the United States, they had more money than they had when they were in Italy. They were able to earn more money. So with that money, they were able to buy more meat. So they decided to start making these meatballs. And the meatballs that they made had more meat and less filler than the meatballs that they had in Italy. They do have meatballs in Italy. The meatballs there tend to be very small, almost marble-sized, and they have a lot more bread in them. And sometimes they're actually made with fish. They're made with all different types of meat. The meatballs that we have in the United States are normally made with either ground beef and pork, or just beef, or sometimes turkey, ground turkey. So it just kind of depends on how you like to make your meatballs. But meatballs are kind of a food from around the world. There are meatballs that you find in Chinese cuisine, Spanish, albondigas is what they're called in Spain. But they don't, a lot of them, Spanish will put them, the Chinese will put them into soup a lot of times. So there is a history of meatballs, but like I said, the spaghetti and meatballs didn't actually come from Italy. I know, very sad. But we have them, so that's all good, right? And you can make this wonderful meatball dish for National Meatball Day, which is March 9th. So you're learning this in time to make it for this year's National Meatball Day. So I hope you do that and enjoy them. Now on with the recipe. All right, so I said we're going to be making our meatballs first. So I'll go over the ingredients. In my bowl, I've got a pound of ground pork and a pound of ground beef. I also have about a half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic that I've grated. I've got half a cup of finely diced onion, and I've got an egg, and I do have one piece of bread that I've soaked in milk, so it's pretty squishy, and salt and pepper. So that's what is going to be going into our meatballs. Into our tomato sauce, we've got 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. You can use diced if you'd like, or you could even use sauce. I like a little texture in my sauce, but I like the more smooth crushed tomatoes. I've got a half a cup of diced onion. I've got a couple of cloves of grated garlic. I have got a couple of rinds from the Parmesan cheese that I'm just going to drop into the sauce, and that'll add some flavor to it, a little bit of depth. I've got some dried oregano and basil that I dried from my garden this last summer. And I've got about a half cup of tomato paste. I like to add a little tomato paste and then add a little bit of water. Tomato paste is a very concentrated tomato flavor, which I really, really like. So I'm going to add a little bit of that, and it just kind of gives it a little extra boost of flavor. All right, so we're going to get started with our meatballs. Really, all you're going to do is put everything together in your bowl and mix it up. I'm going to start by adding my Parmesan cheese. Dump it right in. We're going to add our garlic. Easier said than done. Garlic doesn't want to come out. There we go. we're gonna get our hands dirty, so that's just the way that goes. We're gonna add our onion. We will crack our egg in. There we are. And I'm going to kind of mush my bread up and get it in there. And the bread and the egg are basically going to be in the meatballs to help bind it. Those are the things that keep the meatballs from falling apart. So that's the reason we put bread. Sometimes people put breadcrumbs in, and that's normally what I do. I thought I would try this version instead today. It's a little bit sloppy, as you can see, but I think will work out pretty well. I might have to take these crusts off. They're a little bit tough. So there we are. Our bread is in. I'm just going to rinse my hands quick and start mixing that up. All right. So I'm going to add a little pepper. All right, then we just get our hand right in there and get mixing up. Oh, it's very squishy, which is fun. This is kind of the fun part of it, actually. But we want to get everything combined really, really nicely so that the two meats are combined. If you don't want to use pork, you can definitely just use ground beef if you'd like, or you can use ground turkey or ground chicken. Whatever your favorite is, that's totally fine. I've made turkey meatballs, I've made chicken meatballs in the past, so it's just whatever your jam is, you can just go with it. This is kind of a more traditional mix. The pork gives, I usually tend to use a fairly lean ground beef just because that's how I like it. So the pork just kind of gives it a little extra fat, and fat in cooking equals flavor. So it looks like we're pretty well mixed now. You can see the two meats are kind of mixed in there. Everything looks pretty good, and it's pretty sticky, so it should stick together pretty well. So then what we're gonna do is, I've got a pan over here. Just gonna grab that. I have put some aluminum foil on my pan and sprayed it with a cooking spray, just so the meatballs don't stick. And I'm going to take, I don't really measure these, but they're gonna be about the size of a golf ball. Okay, and we're just gonna roll them up and put them on to our baking sheet until we have used up all of our meat. And you want to try to keep them about the same size as much as possible. If they will cook at the same rate if they are the same size. If they're wildly different sizes, if you have like some huge ones and some little ones, the little ones will be cooked much faster than the larger ones, and that could cause a little bit of a problem for you. So we are just going to make them all about the same size. So if you look at where my size is right now, they're all pretty close to the same size. I don't get quite so crazy as to, you know, weigh them or anything, but you just kind of eyeball them. There we go. And I'm just going to continue rolling out my meatballs. As you can see, I am finished rolling all my meatballs. I've got them on my tray ready to go in the oven. Just a little word about some food safety. I was using my hands to shape the meatballs, and the meatballs have raw meat in them. So we want to make sure that we wash our hands really well with soap and water before we do anything else in the kitchen, which I've already done. I washed my hands after I was done rolling my meatballs. I've got my oven set at 375, and I'm going to pop the meatballs into the oven to bake. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of keep my eye on them. When they start to brown on this side, I will take them out of the oven, turn them over, let them brown up on the opposite side a little bit, and then I'll take them out. They may not be cooked all the way through, and that's okay because they are going to cook in our sauce for a little while, so that should cook them all the way through once they have time to simmer in the pasta sauce. So we're going to put those in the oven right now. And now for the sauce. We've got our ingredients all ready to go. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to our pan. Let's get that started. I want it, kind of a medium heat. I'm going to add a little bit, just like a tablespoon or two of olive oil. Let that heat up for a few seconds. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add our chopped onion to the pan. Let's see if I can find my favorite spoon here. Here it is. I think all cooks have their favorite spoon, right? This spoon was my grandfather's spoon, and I absolutely love using it. It's nice. It's just a nice lightweight spoon. All right. Just going to swirl my oil in there. Stir it up a little. I want to make sure the oil is pretty hot before I put the onions in. I like to hear a good sizzle on our onion when you put it in. I think that should be good. There we are. Hear the sizzle. So we're going to cook the onion on its own. Cooking onion in this way is, or any vegetable or anything, is called sautéing. So we are sautéing our onion. We're just going to do that till it gets, it should start to get clear and soften a little bit. That's what we are looking for with our onion. Doesn't take too long, especially when it's diced up very finely like I have this. Shouldn't take long at all, just a few minutes. Wow, it smells amazing. If you don't like onion, or you have some sort of allergy to onion or whatever, you could leave it out. It wouldn't be the end of the world. All right, we are getting there. Gonna add our garlic. And I grated this garlic. Grating garlic is a little tricky. You could very easily, instead of grating it, you could just chop it very finely. That's normally what I do. I just thought I would try something different today. So our garlic is in there. The garlic you don't want to cook too long. It will burn fairly quickly. So we're going to add our crushed tomatoes at this point. I'm just going to turn that down a little bit, maybe a medium-low at this point. It's just a little bit too hot. And I will rinse this can out into our sauce in just a minute. So we're just going to stir that onion and the garlic into the sauce. I like to cut my onion very, very finely for this. It just kind of, I like the texture of a finely chopped onion in my pasta sauce. We're now going to add our tomato paste. Like I said, the tomato paste is just going to give it a little extra flavor. It's kind of a very concentrated tomato flavors, tomato paste. I use it quite a bit. I just think it adds a great amount of extra tomatoiness. I don't know if I just made up a word or not, but perhaps. Alright, so I'm just going to use a little bit of water to kind of clean out my can and water down my tomato paste a little bit. So I'm just going to stir that around until it breaks up and combines with the rest of the sauce and the tomatoes, onions, and garlic. Shouldn't be able to see any big globs of tomato paste once you're finished stirring that in. You could also use jarred tomato sauce. That is absolutely fine. I very often use a jar of tomato sauce instead. It just depends on what kind of time you have. I had extra time today, so I'm making it from scratch. So you can see our sauce looks pretty smooth. Everything looks to be pretty well incorporated. So our next thing we'll be adding is we're going to add our basil and oregano. It's nice to be able to dry your herbs that you maybe grow during the summer, so that it kind of gives you a summertime feel in the middle of winter like we're in now. That was the last of my basil though, so I have plenty of oregano left. Alright, we're just going to stir that in. And then I am going to add my Parmesan cheese rinds. So this will just add some flavor, and we're not going to eat those. Those will come out before we actually eat our pasta. But they just give it a little bit of flavor. We're going to mix those in. Add a little pinch of salt. And a bit of pepper. If you like it spicy, you could add at this point some chili flakes if you'd like. Sometimes I do that. I'm not going to tonight. Alright. Stir that all together, and just going to let that, I'm going to turn it way down on the oven, probably all the way to low, because we just want this to simmer. Just barely cooking, just kind of heating through. It'll help combine all those flavors together, and it'll make it like super tasty. So we're going to be waiting for our meatballs. Once the meatballs are done, we'll add those to the sauce and cook it a little bit longer before we make our spaghetti. Our meatballs have been in the oven for about almost an hour now. I flipped them over about halfway through, and we're just going to take those out. They look like they're browning up nicely. They're probably cooked pretty well through. Alright, we've got quite a few meatballs here. I don't know that we're going to need all of them for our sauce. So what I'll probably do is I'll put as many in as I can fit into my pan. The rest I will let cool, and then I'm going to put them into the freezer for another meal later down the line. They also make really good meatball sandwiches, or sometimes I will cut them up and put them on pizza, homemade pizza. So that's another thing we can do with these. So I'm going to grab a plate quickly. Oops, let's see here. And we're just going to take some of these meatballs off our pan. Okay, I think that's probably enough. And we're going to put these into our sauce. Our sauce is simmering away here. Just going to add those to our pan. We'll kind of see from there, kind of eyeball it and see if we need to add more meatballs or if we're okay with what we've got. Stir those so that the sauce covers them. Oh my goodness, the smell in here. Quite incredible. Cameraman is in agreement with me on that. Alright, so we've got our meatballs, and they are just, I think that's the perfect number of meatballs for this recipe. So we are going to just put that pretty low. Tomato sauce likes to bubble a lot when it gets hot, and it will bubble all over your stovetop otherwise. So I'm just going to leave it at a pretty low simmer and just let that kind of hang out there. Meanwhile, I've got a large pot of water on my stovetop that I am bringing to a boil, and that is nearly ready. So it's starting to boil a little bit. I'm going to add salt. You always want to season your pasta water. So I'm going to add a fairly healthy couple of big pinches of salt to my pot and just let that come to a boil. So while we're waiting on that, we're just going to we're gonna ogle our meatballs. They look so good. I am getting really hungry. How about you guys? Cameraman is hungry. I'm hungry too. Alright, our water looks like it is pretty much ready to go. Since I've got boxed pasta today, what we're going to do is just do exactly what it says on the box. The instructions are there for a reason. And this is telling me to boil my pasta for 10 minutes. Not quite. Okay, I think it is coming up to a boil here now. Alright, so we are going to add our pasta to our water. I needed the box open. There we go. Alright. So let's just be careful adding the pasta. The water is very hot. Don't want to burn yourself or anyone else. I'm going to put that whole box in. It's about a pound of spaghetti. And you can use other noodles if you'd like. I do like spaghetti with my meatballs. I think it's a good shape of pasta to have with the meatballs. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a stir. And we're going to put our timer on for 10 minutes. So the time on those boxes is very accurate. So you do want to cook it just for 10 minutes. You don't want your pasta to be mushy. You want it to be, as they call it in Italy, al dente, which means to the tooth. So it has just a little bit of a bite to it. So we're going to continue cooking our pasta for 10 minutes and letting our pasta sauce and meatballs simmer and get to know each other really well in their pot here. So we are down to less than a minute left on our pasta, so we are going to very quickly just remove a little bit of our water from our pasta. Always, always, always want to take about at least a half cup of that water out of your pasta before you drain it. It really is nice to add a little bit to the sauce. The water has got some of the starch from the pasta in the water, and adding a little bit to your sauce helps the sauce stick to your pasta noodles. So it's a trick that chefs use all over the place. Our sauce is hot and ready to go. What I'm going to do, you can mix your pasta into your sauce. My pan is not big enough for that, so I won't be doing that. I'm just going to plate my pasta, and then I will pour the sauce over the top. We are going to very carefully, because it's very hot and heavy, take this to our sink to drain it. get a facial. All right, got all of that water out at once. Put that back. Okay, so what we're gonna do is plate some of our spaghetti. And there is spaghetti that you can get that has little ridges in it. That spaghetti is really nice because that actually helps hold on to the sauce a little bit as well. I'm gonna add just a touch of our hot pasta water to our sauce and stir that in. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. All right. Oops. Okay, so we're gonna take some of our meatballs and our sauce, just lay that on top of our spaghetti. Oh, this looks scrumptious. A little bit more sauce. There we are. Turn that off. And here we have our spaghetti and meatballs. And I have grated some extra Parmesan cheese to sprinkle over the top, just as a little extra. And there we have it. Homemade spaghetti and meatballs. I hope you make this and enjoy it. Please let me know if you do. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with another Let's Make Lunch. Until then, bye.